Hello and welcome to the Ask the Industry podcast, episode 13. For those of you new to the show, this is the podcast where I interview the most influential people from the worlds of stand-up, comedy, writing, radio, TV, and today, design. This is the last one in our design series for now, and it's with Sean Brightman. Sean is a comedian, a comedy promoter, and a designer. For the last 6 years, he's been designing the Fringe Programs for both PBH and now Freestival, and knows better than anyone what makes a good listing in the program. He has read all of your bios, he's looked at all of your imagery, and he has done the layout and the structure, and also is involved in the advertising side of those big sort of quarter page things that you see in the Fringe. So who better to tell us, just as the deadline is around the corner, what we should have in our listing. It's a short episode, it's more of an in-between episode, it's about 30 to 40 minutes of a chat with him. I should quickly explain that we had to do it over Skype, which means the audio quality is not as good as it normally is, but it's definitely workable. If this is your first podcast you're listening to from me, it's usually a lot better than this. I'm sorry about the low quality. We couldn't get in the same room together, and because the Fringe deadline for the program is about 2.5 weeks away when I'm making this, I just wanted to get it out the door, and I wanted to give you guys some useful content because we're all panicking and we're all sort of wondering what will make someone come to see my show? What will grab someone's attention in the image that will make them stop for a second as they are browsing the other 20,000 shows, read my title, read my carefully sculpted bio, and then hopefully take time out of their lives to come and listen to my jokes or performance of any kind. I'm aware they're not just comedians listening to this. Sean goes into quite a lot of detail in what he believes is the fundamental stuff you should have in a brochure listing. He also discusses the advertising side of it, whether it's worth it, whether it's not, and he has kindly said, if you listen to this, which you are, and you want his design work, you can commission him and say you heard about him through my podcast, and he will give you 10% off his normal rates. We go into his rates a little bit in the podcast, but it's a bit of a fluid thing with him. So best get in contact with him at seanbrightmandesigns.com. The links are all in the show notes. My photographer, Bella Noel, who has done my headshots this year, as well as my design, has kindly offered for the first 10 people who get in contact and commission her 30% off her normal rates for an Edinburgh Fringe special for headshots only, and 20% off for everyone else after that. And also she does designs, posters and things, so if you wanted it all from one person you can. And when we talk about with Sean the merits of using a photographer and designer of the same person, sort of a continuation of a theme that we started with Adil Sukhan a few episodes earlier. I'm not going to talk too much longer because I want this to be quite a short episode. Basically, if you like it, share it with a friend. It would be really useful for anyone doing any Fringe show. Yes, this one is predominantly focused at the Edinburgh Fringe, but I feel like a lot of the stuff is transferable. I'm going to the Brighton Fringe. I'm going to be using a lot of the stuff he talked about for my listing there. So if you are doing any Fringe festival, or you have any friends doing a Fringe festival, or you have any inkling in the future of doing a Fringe festival, listen to this, share it with a friend who might be a performer, or just someone who's interested in design. If you really like it, please give it a rating on iTunes. And if you really love this and you want to keep me going, please give me a donation through the PayPal button on the right-hand side of the website. So now, without any further delay, this is Sean.
I'm the design and I would say kind of creative director behind the Freestival brand, and this year and last year there was a sponsor on board, which was La Favorita delivered, and so for Freestival it was a case of basically designing the logo and how it was going to look, and then taking that across to every facet of the festival for Freestival. So it would be directional signage, posters, the way templates for comedians, so to make it easier and make everything look as consistent as professional as possible. I developed some basic posters, flyer templates, some basic brand guidelines, and a website design, just right across the board, everything that was, and everything obviously had to be done very tight deadlines, very tight budgets. In fact, no budget. Just to try to, and just to try and make everything look really good, everything be as consistent as possible. It's very similar for the Free Fringe. The Free Fringe works on the basis of volunteers. So I volunteered myself about sort of 6 or 7 years ago, and I think I did design 5 or 6 of their brochures. I think it's 5 actually. And so every year it'd be a case of designing a brochure that grew and grew and grew. Which designed at first I'd sort of come up with a cover concept and get that over for Peter to sign off, and he would usually be very good about signing it off without any amends and like what I did, and then you just basically wait until the everything's kind of confirmed, and then you get a big spreadsheet of every single act in the running order, and you ask over and over and over again for acts to send you their little square pictures, and you make a brochure. Which is awesome fun. It's hellish, and it means a lot of late nights and early mornings because it's a voluntary thing and you're not getting paid. You're doing it around your day job or your work and trying to write a show and all the rest of it. So I usually spend my where every other comedian is working on their show for 6 months before. I usually late at night till sort of 2 in the morning every night designing a brochure and then trying to fit in writing on journeys and little places like that to try and do a show. So that's basically what I've done in terms of PBH and Freestyle over the last few years.
Each show gets a very small image.
Yeah.
That we get for free. I mean, not for free. With your payment to the brochure, you get that sort of listing, and you get a very small image.
That's right. Yeah.
What advice could you give people to make the most of something such a small commodity that they've got to play with?
Firstly, I would say, if for the most part, especially newer comedians, and invariably people that do the Fringe, to make the most of your brochure image, the little square image you get with the words, I personally would use your face on it. That's the thing that really sells you. And a lot of people often make the mistake of just putting in something different, like a random shot of a teddy bear or something about that might be slightly relevant to their show. It might trying to be a little irreverent. Don't do that. If in doubt, use a shot of you. Basically, that's what sells your show. That's because there's such a lot of images that you see in the brochure, and there's such a lot of shows to go through. Having something that just catches people's eyes is very, very difficult. If you've got a good shot of yourself, and then you let the words do the talking. That's the way I would recommend doing it usually, and I've tried everything, so it's kind of that would be my advice.
In terms of the wording, we've got a limited number of words, obviously, because there's limited number of space in each listing.
Yeah.
Because obviously you can't do much with that. You can't really do line breaks or try and align it differently, because obviously that's hell on your end.
Yeah, it's got because as a designer, you've got to flow in a lot of time. For PBH, it was in the region of how many shows? There were a lot, like hundreds of shows. And so you're going through the process of having to make sure you're lining all the text, you're correcting people's text. Some people are writing, trying to write War and Peace. Some people are trying to write. Trying to cheat the system by just using ridiculously long words, and also you get all sorts of things that you have to try and design around. In terms of the important thing is you've got a small amount of space to sell your show. So the best thing to do is to give people a synopsis of what it's about, and not try and that's the only way you're going to get people to interested in coming, I think if you start to try and be a bit too put some humour in. If you're a comedian, make sure it's got some jokes in there. That's the best. I think the best way to sell a show. You'll catch people that if you make them laugh. If you're a theatre group or you're doing a theatrical show, it's a little bit different. And I think that applies obviously to the image as well. If it's a comedy club or if it's a theatre show, you would want to put an image maybe that is a logo or icon for the show that you're producing. But in terms of words, just keep it short. If you're a comedian, make it as funny and snappy as you can, and give people just a slight synopsis about the show. If the show's about love, say this show is about love. That's it for me.
A lot of we've been having an ongoing conversation in the podcast with different guests about the value of being listed in the program, because some people think it's quite an expensive investment when you could buy more flyers or you could put the money into a stunt or something. What do you feel about that?
Are you talking about the main brochure, like the main Fringe brochure, or are you talking about the specific mini festival brochures, for example, the PBH brochure and the Freestival brochure?
I'm actually talking about two things there. Sorry, I'm talking about the listing in the main brochure.
Yeah.
But also like the bigger side adverts you get in the smaller brochures.
Yeah. Personally, I think if you are taking a show to the Fringe and you want to be taken seriously, i.e. you want to get reviewers in and you want to push what you're doing, it's a very good idea to have it in the main brochure. I think although it is a catalogue of many shows, if you're not in there, I think you've got less chance of getting people to come and review the show. I think you've got less chance. You get a lot of support from the Fringe people by being in the brochure, and there's a lot of extra things that you can kind of hook onto, courses and talks and things like that, by being an actual part of the Fringe. So I think there is value in it. It's difficult to say. This year I was involved with putting in some small adverts in the Fringe brochure. Did it make people come and see my show? I don't think so. I think unless you're taking a half page or a big, a fair sized advert in it, which is going to cost you thousands, I'm not sure it's going to really make much of a difference. Saying that, if you can afford to do that, you're going to have a lot of people potentially seeing your design or your face and info about your show, because it obviously gets well distributed before the Fringe all over the country, and then during the Fringe it's everywhere, the brochure. So I think that it's worth it for that. Okay. In terms of paying for, in terms of using that money instead for flyers and flyering and sending, you can try it. I don't know. I think this is something that people need to try and experiment with on in a few years in a row and see what happens. I think Edinburgh's like, and trying to do Edinburgh in quote marks. You're trying to. You've got to do everything. That's the thing. You've got to do all these little things, from sending out your press releases at the right time to doing, putting it in the brochure, to getting your flyers done at the right time, making sure they look good, getting posters done and stuck up all around the city, putting adverts on website. You've got to do to get noticed. You've got to do all those things and do a little rain dance at the right time. You've got to do everything. And it's all part of. It's like a completely weird, holistic approach to marketing yourself, which is why PR people make a lot of money, as well as plenty of snake oil salesmen, I'm sure.
You do a lot of Fringe designs for flyers and posters as well?
That's correct. I do a lot of designs for flyers and posters for people's Edinburgh shows.
Which is obviously some of your bread and butter. That's paid work. I should say that. That's not you volunteering for people.
I'm very blessed in that mainly through word of mouth, people approach me and want me to do their flyer and poster designs, which is really lovely. In terms of it being a bread and butter thing, let's not forget. I mean, in Edinburgh shows, there's lots of very skint comedians going up there and people that don't have much money, so it's not something that is like that makes me a lot of money. The reason I love doing it is because it's the fun projects tend to be there. Like doing someone's show flyer is a lot more fun than doing retail brand design for XXX brand, which is the sort of work that I've been used to doing for years and years and years. So that's kind of how I fell into it. It's a lot more fun doing your Edinburgh show flyer and poster and seeing that up and seeing the difference it makes to somebody and how happy they are with it, than just doing like I say something for a huge brand and just getting this nonchalant response and a load of amends. So that's why I really do it, and that's why I love doing it, because of that. Yes, it makes a few quid here and there, but it's secondary to actually the fun of doing the process and working with somebody and doing something interesting. And I'll actively seek out those projects more and more, especially if it's for not much money, because I think it's, for me creatively, it's a lot more fun to be picking out those kind of projects. So yeah, if you've got an interesting project, bring it this way.
In terms of flyers, then, if you don't mind saying, how much does an average flyer / poster cost for a comedian to get you to make?
To get me to well, it all depends how difficult it is, I guess. Like how labour intensive it is, because obviously if it's something that it requires a huge amount of illustration work or a huge amount of photoshopping work, and it's going to take me 2 weeks and lots of, then obviously that's going to be a higher price than somebody that comes with their photograph and an interesting title and needs a background and that kind of stuff. So there's like a big kind of difference between the two. Like I had invariably for Edinburgh acts, if it's the most amount of money I've kind of charged would be around £300, and that's kind of like usually that's like a normal day's working in an agency. But for that would often be like 2 or 3 days worth of work for a comedian on a comedian's flyer. Because I think any more than that, people struggle to afford it. That's not to say if huge name acts that are filling stadiums, I happily charge them more. But for the most part, it's around £120 or £80, depending on depending on how much work's involved. And for that, usually I will set them up with the square show image that they need for the festival brochures, an A6 double-sided flyer design and poster design that then they can get printed wherever they like. The hard and fast, there's no hard and fast rule. So the idea would be that I have a form that I get people to fill in, which I'll be putting online this year. They send me that. They send me their images and obviously all the text in the form. I'll then come back to them with a quote, and then if they're happy, then we go ahead from there. That's the way it works.
So you take massively into account what level of comedians at and whether they're doing the free and paid fringe?
No, I don't. Because there's no way I would do that, because often the people that are doing the paid fringe are worse off than the free fringe. People that are doing the free fringe. So I don't take that into account. It's more about how much work is involved with putting a design together or a concept, because it might be that they want to do a whole campaign and they're going to need 4 different poster designs and a flyer design that's set different from the posters, and they might need advertising done, and they might need obviously it's going to take a lot longer to produce a campaign and come up with ideas and things like that than if you if you're just doing one flyer for someone because they don't need a poster, there's a huge gulf there. So the idea is it's all based on, you scope out what somebody needs, and then you can sort of give an estimate based around that and go from there. So it's never done on the basis of who somebody is, or in terms of how, like, for me that doesn't really work so well. I always kind of charge my fees based around the work involved, and basically if there's a particular project that's going to be really interesting creatively and different, then sometimes I've been known to even do something for free for people, but it's all dependent on on what it is. So it's basically what I would advise people to do is get in touch, and then we go from there. That's the usual way of doing it. Get in touch, give me your ideas of what you need, and then I can come back to you and work out a plan.
At what stage should someone come and talk to you? Because often you register the show before the show is finished.
Yeah.
And as a result, you might come to you and say, oh, the show is about dogs and frisbees, and then by the time you get to the Fringe, the show is actually about kangaroos and bandanas.
Yeah, I think as early as possible, really, because as a creative and as somebody that is a performer and a comedian too, of sorts, I think it's a good idea to often get somebody else's opinion. In any case, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Show idea, show title, and then, because I think the way I look at it as well with posters and flyers and stuff for Edinburgh, it's kind of like coming up with you come up with, you say it's like your album, or if you're a musician, or you're writing songs. When you come up, you want to put a good album cover on it. You want to put a good you want to make sure your message gets out there. And I think a designer can help you with that. There's a good case in point for me was I've spent a good few years designing Edinburgh things for the Banderman for Rob Roderick, and he's great to work with. Really, really great to work with, and a lot of fun. And he's got very clear ideas about what he wants to start with. But often, I would sort of say, well, what you should try and do is involve me earlier on, and then we can come up with an idea, and maybe then you could get your photographs shot to that idea, rather than having your photograph shot and then going, well, this is kind of what I like, and you make a poster. Because it might be that you come up with something completely different based around, you might dress a certain way because your whole poster concept is. And then he kind of took that on board, and the last couple of years he's done very, very different posters and promotional stuff based on that idea. Like this year's one was to do with, 2 years ago it was called Moonrock Boombox, and it was all spacesuit, very the Michael Jackson kind of Don't Blame Me on the Boogie kind of look and feel to it almost. And then this year was based in that had like a very hotel reception kind of feel, and the whole image was shot around that concept. So the earlier you can involve someone, I think often that will play to your advantage.
Say someone had a show and they don't know what they want from a flyer, but they know they need one.
Yeah.
Do you offer that facility that someone can come to you and say, this is the show, can you make me a flyer?
This is it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my job, is to try and make people look good and their show look good, and the idea is to try and make, there's no guarantees, but to give them as good a start as possible in terms of helping to promote the show. And I think my advice is, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier on, is if in doubt, make sure you've got some really good headshots if you haven't got a concept in mind, and you use those headshots. You use some really nice photography of you. So you find a good photographer, and and get some really good shots done, because you can fall back and use those as your show poster, and then it's a case of, you know, you get a good designer to put some nice typography on it and the words and everything, and you know, some kooky little bits and pieces, and it can become something that really works for you. So that would be, if in doubt, make sure you've got some good headshots in your pocket ready to use.
Because there's a bit of a debate going on in terms of whether you should use a picture of yourself in your poster, or whether it's better to go with like an illustration or a design. I know this year I decided I'm going to have myself on my poster, because a lot of people say that's beneficial. You've just said headshots are great to have.
Yeah, I think, well, because if you might have a concept where the design is going to require illustration. You might have a concept like Beth Feis's poster this year. Was she had illustration, but and it really played to her what she was doing, you know. And the same with Ali Bryce's poster that he had this year for Eric Mead. You know, none of these are mine, but using illustration is a powerful thing. You can use it with photography. There's no reason you have to opt for one or the other. So I think it's kind of like you need to, the best kind of poster is the one that you know, is you're going to find creatively the thing that works. There are occasions where people just have an illustration, but I think if you're a fairly unknown comedian, the best thing to do is at least have that illustration looking like you. If you're doing, you know, if it's your show and you've got, you know, an illustration of a rubber duck on the front, and it's got really not a lot of relevance to your, you know, to you, no one knows what you look like. So you get given a flyer of a rubber duck, and it's, you know, Simon's show, and it says nothing about you as a comedian, or people can't recognise who you are. I don't think that helps to sell your show. So I think you've always got to bear in mind, especially as somebody that's not known. Like if it's, you know, Stuart Lee's show, or someone that's got a big following already, yeah, you can stick a rubber duck on the front. People can go and see a show because pretty much everyone knows what he looks like. So you've got that fame and infamy already. Where if it's you know, myself or yourself or somebody that's not a known face, then you've got to put yourself about. That's it. And whether that's for illustration, but make it look like you. If it's through photography or it's through a mixed media, yeah, great. But it's still got to look like you. I think that's because that's what you're promoting.
And when you're designing a flyer or a poster,
yeah,
which bit of it is the part that catches people's eye? Because obviously posters are, you know, when we're there for a month, posters just blend in and become scenery.
It's really right. Okay, so I'll phrase the question. So it's so when you're designing a poster or flyer for someone's Edinburgh show, you want it to try and catch people's eyes. There is thousands and thousands and thousands of flyers and posters, as we all know in Edinburgh. You're inundated with them everywhere you go. They're pushed into your hands everywhere you walk, and you just get an absolute overload. I think the way to get noticed and the way to get your image noticed is by having a clever idea or clever concept, and then trying to get it in as many places as possible. I mean, one thing we haven't really talked about here yet, but is very effective, is using poster sites around Edinburgh. But again, it's got to be kind of like the right ones, and it involves a lot of investment to do it. One of the best poster campaigns I've seen in the last couple of years was last year with Paco Erhardt, the German comedian, who had a very, very good show. And he knows how to promote himself to back it up. And I think he had like 4 or 5 different posters, and the concept was that and the show title was The Worst German Ever, so he wasn't very good at what he does. And all the posters looked consistent in terms of design. I'm not saying they were the best designed posters in the world, but the concept was brilliant. And the concept was him there was one that didn't even have him in the shot. You just saw his feet walking into the shot because he was late for the photo shoot. And each one had a post-it note on it, which would say, late for photo shoot, or one, had pick the key idea that he was showing to push him as the worst German ever. But he had like a kind of big, not billboard, but like a big like banner posters up, and he obviously spent quite a lot of money promoting the show, and it did mean that he got full houses. I don't think he made money doing it, but at least he performed to full houses. And that's why he did that. And you could say that his promotion was very, very successful. Another good example of this is another German comedian, Christian Schultelow, who a couple of years ago did a show called The 50-Foot German, because he's very tall. And he had a show which was on a nightclub on Calgate, and he had big banner posters done, like a big banner done with the design of his flyer poster on. His flyer was instead of it being A5 or A4, it was half the size. It was like A5 cut in half long ways, so it was half as thin, kind of thing. I'm not explaining it very well. It was taller than your average flyer, basically. So, which meant that it stood out from all the other flyers that there were. And then he used the banner right outside the venue, and then he had a couple of pull-up banners that he would put up an hour before showtime outside the venue as well. So you can do things to get yourself noticed that don't necessarily cost you lots and lots of money. There's two different examples there. There's one German comedian that spent a lot of money on advertising, but his concept was really, really clever. There's another German comedian whose concept was really clever as well, and used his money more effectively in terms of placing banners and stuff, but not in the usual kind of way. So you can do it. You can go either way. But I think a huge image somewhere is gonna be beneficial. It's getting you noticed. That's the thing.
Two last questions for you. First one is, for those ideas, obviously they might have come up with them themselves. A lot of comedians can't afford PR or expensive ad companies to help them out.
Yeah.
Are there any services or people? I mean, you might be yourself. Who offer cheaper options for maybe like one-off consultations or aid?
There are. I think you as a comedian, you'll often get you'll know as much about this as I do. So finding people in terms of PR people or cheap PR people, that's the it's never an easy thing, and then there's lots of people that are willing to take your money and not do a great amount of work, I guess. There are Paco this year used people per hour and found a really, really, really brilliant person that wanted to help and was very keen to get involved and learn and try, that. So I think that was you can use things like that, like people per hour. I think is a good place to start to find people that aren't necessarily as experienced, but are willing to put in the time and effort to help you, because it's very difficult doing it all yourself. But I haven't tried that out as an option myself, so I'm not saying go and do it. But it might be a good place to start,
And last question: if you could give comedians or performers in general, because we don't just have comedians listening to this. I've got a few actors and spoken word people who've messaged me about it. So if you could give a group of performers one bit of advice in terms of design,
yeah,
what would that be?
Okay, if I could give comedians and performers one piece of advice in terms of design and their and creating their Edinburgh posters or posts and flyers for any show they're doing, don't do it themselves in Word. Hire a decent designer. That's it. Hire someone that knows what they're doing, that is invested the time, energy, and effort in learning their craft, because it's a craft that takes a long time to learn and master. And listen to them and hire their services. I'm not saying that because I want you to hire me, comedian person out there listening in, but I want what's best for you, and designing your poster in Word and expecting that to get you a big audience in, or expecting it to get is just not the way forward. If you want to look good at what you do and work with good people, I think that's the thing, and work in a collaborative way, and you'll see the benefits of it. I think that's it.
Do you have any book recommendations for people, like just to get the ideas juices flowing?
In terms of
around designing posters and flyers.
I've got a whole shelf full of books. I couldn't recommend one or two. I'll tell you what. Instead of me recommending some off the top of my head, why don't I ping you over a couple, and then you can stick them somewhere as a link next to the podcast.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great.
Because I could go down and pick you out 10 books, but it's what's relevant and what is useful to me as a designer, and what's useful. I need to think around what's useful for somebody that might not necessarily be doesn't use the information in the same way. But the key thing, I think, is look around. I don't think you necessarily have to look at have any particular book recommendation. There's lots of information in terms of and books in terms of doing Edinburgh and producing shows and what you need to do. But look around, look at posters, go to museums, look at art, look at different things and get inspired. It's always good if you've got a clear idea in your head to find the reference, and that will help sort of inform your opinion and inform the person that's designing your promotional stuff for you. So yeah, look everywhere for inspiration. Don't one book isn't really going to do it, but I will have a think and pick one out for you.
Well, it was more as just stuff that, because I really love design, but I'm just not any good at doing it. So I thought it might be cool to read something that explains, where things should be positioned, where things should be placed. So I've got more information to bring to you, for example, if I was going to use you for my posters.
Yeah.
Or does that not matter when someone comes to you?
It doesn't necessarily matter so much when people, like in terms of when people come to me. I think it's more. You might come to me and go, I've got absolutely no idea what I want. This is the show title. Here are some words I've drafted. Can you come up with some ideas or come up with an idea? Great. You might come to me with a very specific, like, I love this poster or I love this album cover by Beck. I'd really like it to look a bit like that or have a nod towards it. There's all sorts of ways to do it, and if like you say you love design, then you're probably sort of got a bit of an eye for it, and you're looking around for things anyway. But I think it's a really good idea to look at, like, there's lots of books on the history of graphic design and stuff like that. There's books on gig posters. There's books on there's quite a good one from a few years ago called New Masters of Poster Design, but like it dates very quickly. Design often does. So you might have a book from 4 or 5 years ago, or a little bit older, and you look through it and going, oh well, there's not really a lot that, it's like anything. There's design trends that come and go, and there's all sorts of things to sort of bear in mind when posters and flyers are being put together. So I think it's a case of looking everywhere, and if you have got a keen interest, then use a scrapbook or Evernote or something like that, and just record things you like, because that helps to inform your opinion, and it can certainly, going into briefing somebody, it will help you if you've got more of an idea of what you want. But yeah, any one book, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of books, so you go into Waterstones and look in their design section and pick out something you like. But it's very dangerous for me to give someone a recommendation off the top of my head, I think.
It's fair enough. Well,
but if you're going to look at something, find someone like Saul Bass. That's what I'd say, like a classic sort of. He's created many of the best film posters and title sequences, so that's a good place to start.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
My absolute pleasure.
That was Sean Brightman. I'm sure you got a lot out of that. I did. I'm really grateful for his time. Again, sorry about the audio quality. It was recorded over Skype. I can't really do much about it, but the content's there and I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember that if you want someone to design your poster and you're a little bit behind on getting someone commissioned for that, Sean is available. And if you mention the podcast, then you get 10% off his rates. If you need a photographer for headshots, as Sean said, he's not a photographer. So Bella Noel, I'd highly recommend her. She's amazingly professional and did all my headshots this year. And her rates are really competitive. So she's offering 30% off for the first 10 people and then 20% off all the people after that as like an Edinburgh special. I should say I don't get a commission or a cut of either of these people. They've just helped me out, so I'm helping them out. Full disclosure on any of that. The next episode will be with Kate Copstick. If you enjoyed this one and you got something out of it, or you think someone else might get something out of it, please pass it on to anyone you know who are doing a fringe festival. Please rate it in iTunes, that'd really help out. Go to the website, which is Simon Caine, that's SIMONCAINE.co.uk/Ask the Industry Podcast, all one chunk of words. And on the right hand side there's a PayPal button for you to send me 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds, whatever you want, whatever you think this is worth. If you want more content like this, there's a design series on the website, but you can also find the link in the show notes. I've got 2 other interviews, one with Idil Sukhan, who is an art director who's just honestly, that's one definitely to listen to if you're struggling for ideas and for motivation on coming up with how your poster could look. And Izzy Lawrence, if you're interested in more the practical side of it. And both of those are amazing as well. Honestly, I've learnt so much, and I'm not used to designing posters, so it's just definitely worth giving it a go if you've got some form. If you're interested in more in promotion and you want to learn more, give those a whirl. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for all your support. See you next time. Bye.